Hey guys, how's it going? Yes, it is another episode of LAB78 and we're already on episode 11, I believe. And yes, today is a different type of story because I am going to talk about ghost stories. Ooh, right? So I know that a lot of you are really excited because they're like going, oh my gosh, this is the stuff I love. I know some people are telling me they love horror stories. So today is going to be a fun one for those of you who got like these scary things. Now, if you are here for the very first time on Espresso with Sky and here on LAB78, please click the subscribe button and then hit that notification bell. And right now, those of you who are online watching it live, go ahead, hit the like button and then please leave a comment below. Now, if you don't know what comment to leave below, what comment should you put? Today's question is, have you ever seen a ghost? Have you seen a spirit before? And you can write that into the comment section below. All right, guys, for those of you who want to support us here on Espresso with Sky, we have two ways of doing it. We have PayPal, and we also have our new Buy Me a Coffee. And yes, you can sponsor us monthly, or you could just buy me a latte. Yep, you could just buy one latte on this site. So go ahead, if you feel inspired, you can buy me a coffee. All right, guys, before we get into today's ghost stories, there is a couple things I want to talk. Well, one thing I do want to talk about first is, a lot of people are asking is, how is my immigration, my visa status going, right? And actually, the bigger question should be is, am I actually recording this in Malaysia? That's the real question, because I thought it was going to be my last episode last time. However, on May 31st, I had my interview and it went so well. Actually, no, I'm just kidding. I didn't go on an interview. It was canceled and postponed because MCO 3.0, right? We had the new MCO lockdown. It closed down everything. So I guess it's a good thing because number one is it's good because I get to stay in Malaysia a little bit longer. However, it is not a good thing because I'm in lockdown and I am very frustrated inside my room this entire time. So yeah, I'm still here. But you know what the crazy thing is? Now Canada and the US are completely opening up, right? You know that America almost has the same amount of cases per day as Malaysia? That's how low they are. Right? They're like at 10,000 right now, and we're like at something like 6,000, something along that line. We're very close to each other. And you know what the crazier thing is? They said if I fly into America, I get a free vaccination. Like, they'll do it right away for me. I'm like, what? I'm kind of like, maybe I should just go visit for a little bit, get vaccinated, and come back here. Because the vaccination here takes like months, right? I know that someone registered. I've registered here in Malaysia, and I haven't even been approved yet. So I'm just kind of like still waiting for this, you know. Either way. Let's get into some ghost stories today. And I know that a lot of you out there like ghost stories. Either you like ghost stories or you might have heard them, or you like the excitement, or you like to be scared. Now, you know what I actually heard from one of my pastor friends? One of my pastors told me that, you know when you hear a ghost story, you get really scared and your hair starts to stand up like this, either on the back of your neck or on your arms? Like my pastor was telling me like, hey, if you feel that happening, it means that the ghosts you're talking about, they are coming to you at that time. So I'm just like, what? So, you know, in the outside, because I'm a guy, I'm like, all right, whatever. But on the inside, I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Because he said, it's like, you know, like ghosts and spirits they used to be people. So if you start talking about them, it's like, imagine this, guys. Imagine walking down a hallway and then you pass a room and then you hear your name. Like two people are whispering like, oh, did you hear about Sky? What would you do? Would you be like, oh, they're talking about me and walk past? Or would you like, oh, huh? And then you look back, you're like, I wonder what they're saying. And he says, in the same way, they used to be humans. If they hear people talk about them, they come to you. And one of the signs is, right? Your hair stands up on end. So I'm just like, what? That's kind of crazy. And I didn't want to believe it. But now every time my hair stands on end and stuff, I kind of feel like ghosts are coming. So I'm like, so either way, if you know, I'm just going to tell you guys, if you ever feel during any of these stories that your hair starts to come, you know, like stand up, it means ghosts are there. So don't be scared. Okay. So where did all this begin about these ghost stories and like, you know, how people get into ghost stories? And if you really think about it, it's kind of interesting. It really is interesting because how does it begin? How did it really begin? Well, for me, as I travel from country to country to country, one of the things that's really interesting is I always talk to people who've seen ghosts or spirits. Like even right before, like, you know, we had this the thumbnail up about seeing ghosts and I was talking to a dead boy, whatever it is like this, I've already got some friends texting me, DMing me saying, oh my gosh, my daughter has seen a ghost before, or I've seen a ghost before, and people are starting to tell me these stories. So I think it's kind of cool that everyone has a shared experience around the world. Everyone has experienced some type of ghost story. So for me, I'm just like, wow, that's kind of interesting. So as you travel around, you'll realize whether city to city in your same country or country to country, you'll notice that everyone talks about ghost stories. Now, of course, in the beginning, when you're young and you hear these stories, it's really scary. And as you grow up, what happens is you become a little bit more, what's that word? It's that word when you kind of hear too much of it and you're kind of used to it, right? And you sometimes begin to think, oh, is it a real story? Is it a fake story? And what gets even crazier is, we hear other stories, we're not sure if it's real or not, and then all of a sudden, we meet people who have firsthand experience, right? So let me tell you two stories when I was in the UK. When I was living in the UK for 2 years, I was a missionary at that time, and I meet tons of people. And there's this one Brazilian guy, okay? And this Brazilian guy asked me, I want to go to church, right? And I'm like, oh, interesting. Like, it's not a normal thing where people say, oh, I want to go to church, right? But this Brazilian dude is like, hey man, hey pastor, can I go to church? I was like, of course you can come to church. And I'm kind of like, what made you want to come to church? And he said, two things happened to him. I'm like, okay, so what is it? And he said, one day, comes home from work, he sits at the kitchen table, and as he's sitting, there's a cup on the table, and maybe some other things on the table, and he's sitting there by himself, and he's just tired from relaxing from a day. And he said, all of a sudden, the table begins to shake and the cup starts moving towards him and he freaks out like, oh my gosh, right? And then he's like, what? And he freaks out and he goes into his room. So he said that was the first thing. He said that was so weird because it wasn't just a table. Like the cupboards and stuff were moving too, but could have been an earthquake. But he said the second time is the time that it really struck him. So what does it mean the second time? What happened the second experience? So in London, it's super expensive. I'm talking when I was living there, oh my goodness. You ride the train here, it's like how many ringgit? Like 4 ringgit, 5 ringgit to ride the train? Something along that line, right? About 3, 4 ringgit. There, it's like 3, 4 pounds, sometimes 5 pounds, right? That's like almost $8, $9 to ride on the train once, okay? And to take the train to the airport, it's 25 pounds, which is like $45, okay? So it's expensive there. And, because it's expensive, people all have to kind of live together in these, they rent an apartment and 2, 3 people live there. Living in this small bedroom, one apartment, and he's sharing it with some other foreigner from Italy, right? And, he comes home, he's a bus driver, he comes home late from work. And, he doesn't want to wake up his roommate, so he doesn't turn on the lights, he just opens the door, gets changed and everything else, he gets into bed, right? So now it's pitch black. And as he's about to sleep, he hears this from the other corner of the room. This is the sound. And he's like, what? And he freaks out. He jumps out of his bed, runs out of the room, and he's like, what the heck is going on? He grabs a bat, right, from the outside, and then he's like going back into his room, and he leaves the door open a bit so the light shines in on him, and he puts the bat next to him by the bed, and he said he was freaked out, just sitting there by the bed with his bat. And because of those two experiences, he said, he's like, I've never been so scared. And because of that experience, he said, because of that, he's like, I gotta go to church. Right? So for me as a pastor, I'm just like, man, I wish more people saw ghosts, right? Because then more people will be coming to church. So we see these experiences, we hear about these stories, but it gets really real when you start talking to people who have firsthand experience. When I was in Korea, like just before coming to Malaysia, I was also, working at a church, and there was this girl from South Africa. And she said the very first time she saw a spirit is she was a little girl and she was in her attic. Okay? And she's in her attic And, she's playing around, and all of a sudden she just hears her dog barking and barking and barking and barking. And she's like, what? And she goes to the window to see what's going on there. And she sees a little girl's spirit there, like standing in front of the gate, and the dog is barking at the ghost, right? And she said she was so scared, but so intrigued by this ghost that she was so scared even to blink her eyes, because she thought to herself, if I blink, the ghost will go away, right? So she's just staring at it, but she's scared and she's looking, oh my gosh, there's a girl ghost, right? And she said that she went down to get something, came back up, and then the ghost was gone. And I'll tell you another story, a first-hand story of my friend's sister. So this is not first-hand, it's second-hand. His sister told her brother this. Sister, okay, single parent, and has a daughter, okay? And, they're renting a small, in a house, you have the downstairs, like a basement. In America, there's a lot of basements there, right? And what happens is people rent out the bottom of their house, right? Just, for a small, for someone else who wants to rent it. So his sister and their daughter rent this space. Okay, so remember, it's downstairs in the basement. And of course, there's stairs that lead up to the door that leads to the main house, right? But they're only renting the bottom part. So that part is closed. Like the door is closed, but the stairs are still there. And she said that the first night she was there, they're doing all, they're cleaning up everything else. After everything is cleaned, she's walking to the room past the stairs, and she said, there's a little girl sitting on the steps, right? And she's like, ah! Ah! Like she's freaking out because there's a little girl like on the steps, right? She's freaking out like, what? And the girl's just sitting on the steps. And then the brother's like, oh, so what are you gonna do? And then like months went by, and the girl is like always there every once in a while, but she's not scared anymore. She's not scared anymore because she sees the girl all the time. But there's a girl sitting on her steps. So like even that is like freaky as itself, okay? So that leads to kind of where my stories come in. Because as I go around the world, I hear different stories, then, I want you guys to hear a first-hand story. I'm gonna tell you two stories that I went through. Okay, and during these two stories, very interesting that these are where I'm starting to get my first experiences with spirits, and this was my first two experiences when I was 19, and it was within 4 months that these two experiences happened. Okay, so here's the first story. So the first story was 19 years old. I just started going back to church, like really, like seriously going back to church, right? And as I'm going back to church, as I'm starting to get more into church, I'm starting to pray a lot more. And then, if you guys have ever been to a Korean church before, Korean churches in Korea, everywhere, they all have something what you call like the morning service, right? So like Monday to Saturday, you'll go early in the morning to pray, whatever, or you'll pray at home, and then there's gonna have like, you'll have like a message sent to you, whatever it is, right? So, I'm 19 years old. I'm starting to pray, every day in the morning, just kind of get myself like connected to God, everything else. And one day my pastor says, let's do a challenge this week, right? And I'm like going, all right, let's do a challenge. He's like, let's do a 3 a.m. prayer for 1 week. And I was like, what? I'm 19. I go to sleep at 3 a.m., right? It's like, gosh, I don't want to go to sleep at 3 a.m., right? I don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. But I was like, you know what? I'm just getting into this. I'm just getting back into church. It's time for me to challenge myself. 3 a.m., right? 3 a.m., my alarm goes off. I jump out of bed, run. I take a cold shower just to, wake myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all awake. Get myself dressed. I go downstairs, and then, where like, you're on your knee, like you're on the floor, and then like you're on your knees like this, and I'm praying like this, okay? So it's a side view. My side view is like this, and I'm praying like this, okay? So I start to pray. And I remember what my pastor was saying is like, if you pray at this really, really spiritual hour, if you pray at that hour, what's going to happen? He says, well, it's a really spiritual hour, and, it's possible you can see spirits. And I'm just like, whatever, whatever, right? And I start to pray. On my knees, I'm praying like this. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at myself. I'm like, what? My spirit came out of my body, and I'm looking at myself praying. So I'm looking from the bird's eye view. I'm like, what? And I'm looking at myself in the prayer position. But the crazier part was, I wasn't alone. So I see myself praying like this. And then right in front of me is this really dark, ominous figure with a white face. And it's right in front of me. Like basically, when I was praying, if I went like this, the white face would have been right here. And when I saw that, I freaked out. I was like, ah! And then my spirit jumps back into my body. And then of course I do like, the boxing prayer, like, dear God, thank you so much for this. And I'm like, what? Oh, is the spirit still there? And I'm just praying and praying like, God. And then when I finish, I'm like, I open my eyes, nothing's there. I jump up, run back upstairs, jump into my bed and go back to sleep. I was so scared at that time. And that was the first experience I had. The second experience, and this is the one I'm going to talk, this is where the thumbnail comes in about the bus and the boy, okay? So what happens is 3 months later, I've been becoming more and more faithful, talking more and just really getting myself like connected to God and stuff. And what happens was I was in university at that time. And in university, I took a bus to school. And when I take a bus to school, what happens is the bus is a 45-minute bus ride, but the last stop is the university, which means that we have all these students on this bus and we're just all sleeping because, when it hits the last stop, the bus driver wakes up everyone and then everyone gets off the bus and goes to school, right? So every day, it's like 45 minutes, Monday to Friday, taking the bus to go to university. Now, once again, at church, we get this challenge. Basically, it's not a challenge for me, but it's like, hey guys, we should pray a bit more, right? We should kind of get ourselves even more connected. It's like, okay, let's get connected. Yes, let's do this. So I thought to myself, you know what? Praying, I'm not going to wake up at 3. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is, every time I get on that bus, I'm not going to sleep anymore. I'm going to pray. That 45 minutes, I'm going to use that time to pray. And what I started doing was I started praying on this bus like every single day, Monday to Friday, right? And, I'm praying. And then about 2 weeks into it, to this prayer, I'm praying, okay? And I'm on the bus, I'm praying, I'm sitting down. And of course, there's tons of other students in the bus too. And as I'm praying, all of a sudden, there's a little boy. And this little boy comes to me and starts bothering me, right? This little boy. And for me, this boy's talking to me, but I'm like going, dude, don't you see I'm praying? I'm praying, hello, but this kid is just sitting there talking to me. I'm like, why is this kid talking to me when I'm praying? So I'm looking at this kid and I said, hey, where's your dad? Because I'm thinking I gotta find his dad. If I find his dad, then what's going to happen is, the dad's going to tell him, hey, son, stop bothering that guy, and he's going to take him back to his seat, right? So I look at him and I said, where's your dad? And then he looks at me and he says, my dad killed me. I'm like, huh? What did he just say? And it was, my dad killed me. And I was sitting like, what the heck is going on? And what's crazy was, it was at that moment I realized my eyes were still closed. Or my eyes were still closed, I was still praying. And I realized, this is crazy. And what happened was, this kid came back to me for 3 days. Kept coming to me 3 days straight while I was praying on the bus. It was really crazy. And on the last day when I was on that bus, I thought to myself, wow, if I'm looking at this kid the spirit form of this kid that was killed by their dad, I thought to myself, you know what? There's got to be more spirits in here. So I lifted my head up and I looked to the back of the bus, and the bus was packed with gray colored spirits. It was just packed. But in the very back, there was 2 white spirits, but it was packed with gray spirits. And I was just like, oh, I'm 19 at that time, just this is crazy, right? And after, then the weekend came, and then I never saw that boy again. right? But that is basically the very first time. Well, those are the two first experiences. And I'm going to tell you guys, there's way more experiences than this. I've had friends, family, myself gone through even crazier stuff. You know what I was actually going to do today? I was going to actually talk about the first time I did an exorcism. You know, you guys watch the movies, it's like, and then the head goes in circles. Like, I was going to talk about those types of things because I've seen it all throughout my life because, you know, my grandfather was a pastor. I've been at church all my life. I've seen the pastor's daughter, like, demon-possessed. My cousin was demon-possessed. Like, I've seen and I've experienced so many of these things that I was like going, man, you know what? I should talk about the 2 times I did like an exorcism on people. And, you know, I was like, maybe that one would be interesting. But, you know, that's for another time. Like, those are stories for another time. But there's some crazy stuff. Like, I'll tell you guys just one snippet. Like, okay, no, I'll save it for next time, right? But there's these exorcism stories where you're gonna be like, what? Like, this is so crazy. Okay, so I'll do that next time with the exorcism because, you know, like I said, those of you who don't know, I am a pastor. I am an ordained pastor. I was a pastor of a church. I was a missionary for like 9 years. So I traveled to many different countries, saw tons of these different things. People like, you know, like the movies, literally taking knives and writing stuff in the wall and stuff like that. I've seen those types of things and it's just like, what the heck, right? So yeah, in my life, I've only done 2, but it'll be very interesting. And I've seen 2 and I've done 2, and it is very, very, I don't know what the right word to use is. I think the right word is unnatural. Yeah, it is not natural, but we'll do that one at another time. Which means, guys, yes, we've gone through a lot of different things today, and I was talking about these ghost stories. You know, I actually have a bunch more that I could talk about, but those are the main 2 that I wanted to tell you about. So that means we're coming to the end of today's show. So if you made it here all the way to the very end, I am so thankful that you have joined us here today, which means make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you like it, remember, if you're in the room right now, hit that like button right now. And leave a comment below. What's the comment today? The question for the comment today is, have you ever seen a spirit or a ghost? And go write the story in the comments. I would love to see that too. All right, guys. And for those of you, once again, who want to support us, we're on PayPal and buymeacoffee.com, and you'll find it in the description. All right, guys, that is today's Lab 78. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed it. Enjoyed today. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.